Welcome to our Planning for Recovery live webinar. We wanted to put this together for local business owners and other people struggling with some of the same problems we've been dealing with over the last couple weeks. And we wanted to find out and answer questions live. We have several people on the line here that I'd like to introduce. And we're here, so if any time you feel like there's a question that you really want to ask, please use the Zoom group chat there and type away, and we will do our best to address the questions as they come in. So we have Chris Colson from Colson Technologies. He's going to talk to us a little bit about how to work from home safely and address some of the things he's been dealing with. We have Patrick Berry with Conti Wealth Advisors, talk a little bit about what the stimulus package looks like and some financial planning. We have Donna Van Dyne Insurance, why keeping insurance is essential right now. We also have David Riggs of Accounting Services of York and Charles Hobbs of the Hobbs Law Firm. So thank you so much for everyone being here. We've been trying to put together a webinar every week to address concerns and answer questions best we can. I'm going to turn over first to Chris Colson, and the first question we want every one of our presenters to answer is, first of all, who they are, and of course, what's the number one thing the clients have been asking you over the last couple of weeks. And again, if you have a question, please type it in chat.
All right, thanks, Kyle. Appreciate it. My name's Chris Colson, owner of Colson Technologies, and we've been helping clients deal with and handle technology over the past 20 years. Did that answer your question?
Sure.
I guess there's more, yeah. So, I mean, I can go into more stuff, but I'll just do a quick introduction and then roll with it.
Sure. So what's one of the number one things that your customers have been asking for this last couple of weeks?
They're asking us how to work remotely and how do they get access to their office computers, how they get access to their files, and you know, some of the things that they should be thinking about as they're starting to plan for their recovery. And we can get into more in that little bit of detail later.
All right. How about Donna? What have you been dealing with lately?
Hi, everyone. I'm Donna Van Dyne. I own Van Dyne Insurance. I opened this firm in 2006, and our primary focus is commercial insurance. So, of course, our business owners are asking some critical questions about their business income coverage, about should they keep their autos insured during this time when they can't make sales calls. And so this is a huge focus for us. But we'll talk more about how essential it is to keep things to a minimum, but active. Once the conversation rolls back to us.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. And Charles Hobbs, how's your morning going? Day 35. By the way, this is my quarantine mustache, day 35 of the quarantine mustache. Hopefully it doesn't last much longer.
I've been working on a Corona beard, so
oh, I like it.
Along pretty good. Yeah. So I'm Chuck Hobbs, Hobbs Law Firm. I focus my area of practice in family law, bankruptcy, unemployment compensation, and criminal law. So you can imagine I have a lot of questions in just about every one of those areas, all the way through some research I've been doing on the Disease Prevention and Control Law of 1955, which is what the governor is using to enforce the regulations that they're putting in place. There's been a lot of activity from the AOPC that has been, which is the Administrative Office of Pennsylvania Courts. They've been communicating with General Counsel of the Governor's Office. So there's some stuff coming out of there that's giving us guidance to operate, giving the bench and the bar guidance. But the courts are still operational, and we're still trying to piece together hearings and whatnot. So we'll get into that a little bit later, I guess. But I think the number one question is, you know, in family law, what do they do about custody exchanges? And then in unemployment compensation, I can't even tell you what the number one question is. And then as it relates to criminal offense, it would be about this disease prevention.
Excellent, Chuck. Thanks for being here. We'll get to a few more things there. David Riggs of Accounting Services of York is here. David, how's things been going for you the last couple of weeks?
They're going well. We were allowed to open in our office So everyone's been coming in. We're not taking any appointments, of course,
Mm-hmm.
but we're doing a lot of drop-off taxes. A lot of questions I've been hearing from our clients and others are mostly about their payroll and how they can apply for the PPP loan, the SBA loan, the EIDL loans, and how they can apply for unemployment if they're self-employed. We've been gathering a lot of payroll reports for our clients who are applying for the PPP and trying to help them get that paperwork taken care of. We've been in business since 1987. We're well versed in the accounting areas, and we love York.
Awesome. We love York too. There's definitely been a lot of questions concerning the payroll protection program. Is there any new pertinent information that just came out this week in regards to that, or is it still?
Yeah, they are out of money.
Okay.
They have spent the $250 million they put out already. And so if you didn't get it, you have an application pending. Hang tight. They're trying to fund more money into the coffers.
All right. All right. Patrick Berry, anything, Conti Wealth Advisors, thank you for being here. How's it been going?
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be included. So I'm a financial advisor here in York. Conti Wealth is actually group of independent financial advisors. Main office is out of Camp Hill, but we have offices across the country in Florida, New York, and other parts of PA. I work with Cambridge Investment Research is the broker-dealer that I work through. Do all kinds of things from retirement planning and investments for individuals as well as small businesses. We'll do financial planning and a variety of different insurances as well. Mostly just life, long-term care, disability, things of that nature. I'd say biggest thing right now is, kind of to echo what David said, it's things with the PPP, the Payroll Protection Program, the EIDL loans, things about unemployment, and how to navigate some of the personal financial situations. What to do with the stimulus check. Should they pay off a debt? Should they save it? So some personal financial planning things, as well as some more specifics on just, is the self-employment unemployment site available yet? And I thought we were going to get $600, from the federal government in additional unemployment benefits. Where is that? And so just some different updates, from the CARES Act and how to navigate these times. From a market standpoint, interestingly enough, everybody's curious about what's next, what's going to happen. But I'd say it's different than 2008. In 2008, a lot of people were really concerned, financially. And while, I'd say there's a lot more people that are saying, okay, when should I buy in? When should I put money into the market? Instead of just talking about being conservative and what kind of losses are happening. So a little bit different from a market standpoint, but I'm happy to answer all kinds of questions.
Excellent. All right. Well, we can get right into it. We can wrap back around to Chris, or we can start to boil down some of those topics we talked about. As far as unemployment, is the unemployment website working correctly, or is there delays right now?
Well, we're working correctly. That's always, that's an
oxymoron.
Good choice of words there. From my perspective,
it's overloaded.
Yes. Maryland, actually, I just saw an article, Maryland unemployment is hiring. So if someone's looking for a job and they live in the Maryland area, they could potentially, work for unemployment to try to help in multiple different areas. But Pennsylvania, I say they're 1 to 2 weeks away from launching the site for self-employed gig workers, independent contractors. I just saw something the other day that said maybe April 24th. On a call this morning, people were saying 1 to 2 weeks. So hopefully it's sooner rather than later. But
okay, and that's for self-employed and who else?
Gig workers, independent contractors,
okay.
Those who own their own business of one, things of that nature. And don't typically qualify for unemployment under the regular rules.
Gotcha.
I heard that the Pennsylvania unemployment link is opening up today if you're self-employed.
I hope so.
They also opened up, if you're in a partnership, 1065 partnership, you can collect unemployment as well. That came down yesterday.
Yeah.
But I do know the Pennsylvania unemployment link has been inundated with everyone trying to get in, and I know the website's crashed a few times.
Hey, David, do you know if they have any like document written requirements for that gig work or independent contractor unemployment compensation? I'm just trying to figure out, if they need a Schedule C from their tax return or something like that as they submit for that, because there's no unemployment compensation records to really track an independent contractor short of their tax returns.
I anticipate they would need a Schedule C if you're self-employed. I did have another client contact me. He needs a copy of his articles of incorporation to apply for the EIDL loan. So if you don't have that handy, you need to get a copy of that. But back to your question, Chuck, I would anticipate them asking for a copy of the Schedule C or even some 1099s. But I think the Schedule C would be a better option.
Yeah, and just in the PPP loans, my understanding is, as those PPP loans were developing, they really had no standards that were given by the SBA. And it appears that the people that were providing the Schedule Cs seemed to be a little bit more successful in getting that before the money ran out. As these banks came online and asked for more records, they ran out of money.
Yeah, different banks were asking for different requirements for the PPP. They wanted February 19 through February 2020. Another bank wanted January 19 through March of 2020. So it was all across the board of what the banks were asking for as far as payroll records.
Are you finding any one bank was less restrictive or more restrictive than any of the others?
From my understanding, it was just the array of different requirements for payroll reporting is what the different banks were asking for. I know a couple of the local banks asked for specific dates. Some of the federal or not federal, but the nationwide banks were asking for different reporting agents or different reporting requirements. Other places like Cabbage were asking for a total set of different documents. So there was no set standard on what they were asking for.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, my observation with the banks was, at least my experience in working with some of them were very slow to respond. So I'm not, I don't want to name any specific banks, but some of them were moving day one, and some of them, did not deploy their system until day 4, day 5, and I think it probably, as a result, some of their clients are probably the ones that are sitting out this round.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay.
Is there a difference between the SBA funding loan and the PPP? Because I originally understood the SBA loan to be one that was just $10,000. That's what it came out on the news to say. And then I'm hearing now, unless I'm confusing it with something else, that it is now $1,000 per employee, which would tie back to payroll. So that confused me. Are they combining the PPP with the original SBA funding, or is it just changing? I thought maybe I missed something because it's so overwhelming.
I can provide my understanding of it, just the research that I was doing. It appears that there are two separate loans. You have the SBA, which is also called the EIDL loan, which is a loan with, I believe it was, I can't remember the percentage off the top of my head, but I believe it was a 30-year loan that they were going to consider giving you. In addition to that, there was something that you could click where you could get a $10,000 advance. And then that advance had the opportunity of being forgiven. Now, I've heard that they've reduced that to $1,000 or $1,000 per employee, whatever the case may be. The PPP loan was a completely different loan, at least that was my understanding, where that was based upon them providing you 2.5 months of payroll if you could demonstrate payroll. And so long as you kept them employed through that 2.5 months, you could apply for forgiveness. Now, I've looked at the forgiveness, or at least the notes that were coming out from those banks that are saying so long as you qualify for the forgiveness, you have to submit the forgiveness loan application within 60 days. You have to provide all the documents necessary, and you have to certify that it's true and correct. I followed up with those banks saying, okay, can you send me a copy of the forgiveness application so that I can inform people what ducks they need to have in a row, what documents they need to track as they go through this 2.5 months. The response I got was, we have no idea. They put it in the note because it's what the SBA told them, but the SBA has given them no guidelines whatsoever as to what that forgiveness application is going to look like, what is going to be required, or whatever. My recommendation, probably to the people that did get funded, is maybe even create an escrow account where you can literally track everything that you're doing with that money so that you can demonstrate that you meet the requirements, isolate it, use it for payroll, use it for whatever is permitted through the SBA guidelines, but don't, try not to get into the where you have to provide, statements and, try and argue why you have a Sheets transaction in your operating account or something like that.
Right.
I had advised my clients that were applying for the PPP to open up a separate bank account and have that money deposited into that bank account. As long as you use 75% of the money for payroll, then they will consider a forgiveness on that. But you have to use 75% of the money for payroll.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
But if you keep it in a separate account, it makes things a lot easier.
Does everybody have the same kind of understanding as to the structure of the loans? That was my interpretation. The EIDL versus the PPP were separate. Is everybody?
Well, there's 3 loans. There's the PPP, there's the EIDL, and then you can get a separate SBA loan.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And that's the one I thought was originally 10,000, the SBA loan. And then, heard the 1,000 per employee, which, sort of muddied the waters a little bit. I was not aware of the advance versus the loan. That's the last thing I wanted, the 30-year loan. And then I have to question, if you pay it off sooner, is there a penalty for that? How does that work? So I want to make sure I understand it completely before I
don't think there's a penalty for early payment.
Okay.
What I understand, the interest rate was only 1%.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was low. I didn't recall if it jumped up to it, because I remember when we were watching it be deployed, the interest rate changed within a few minutes on the website. It was at one point it was 2.5%, and then 5 minutes later the website changed and then it was down to 1%. So
Wow.
I just didn't want to quote that because it was changing in real time as the applications were being filled out.
Talk about your moving target.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's important to clear up too. The 1% interest rate is on the PPP loans.
Okay.
Yeah.
The EIDL loans and the SBA loans, that has I think it was 3.75% fixed interest rate.
Oh.
And the difference there too is the PPP, is forgivable as long as you met the conditions that David said, where 75% was used for payroll.
Right.
And even if you get, let's just say that you were approved for a higher amount or for a certain amount, and you only used, if you do the calculation, 75% of payroll, let's say you got a $100,000 loan, 75% of payroll comes out to maybe an $80,000 loan. I think they will prorate and forgive the $80,000, not the full 100. But then the SBA loan is not forgivable, and it's a 30-year loan, 3.75% interest rate. But I think another potentially confusing part is the fact that the SBA, the Small Business Association, is behind all of these different programs too. Like they're processing the EIDL loans and the PPP loans as well. Yeah. So when you say SBA, it's not necessarily a totally separate entity. They're doing it all. On the call this morning, they gave out a stat. I'm going to pull it up here. They said last year in 2019, the SBA processed for the entire year 58,000 loans, which came out to about 232 loans a day, equaling about $2 billion. And in the last 2 weeks, they've processed 1,035,000 loans, which comes out to 104,000 a day.
Wow.
And then obviously the 349 billion that was coming from the CARES Act. So, I mean, they were, I know it's not perfect. I know, you know, Kyle said, is it, you know, the system's working smoothly and efficiently. And I mean, as much as they can, but I mean, I still think it's amazing that how much they've processed in the short amount of time.
And Patrick, I'll throw this out here as a theory, but I recall in 2008 when that crash happened, one of the biggest problems was that they did the quote unquote bank bailout. They gave all these big banks all this money, and then the banks didn't lend it out.
Right.
And because everybody was a high risk at that point. So I was kind of assuming that they picked the SBA this go around because the SBA isn't going to they have no reason to hold on to it. I mean, their job is just to get loans out. So,
right. Yep.
and then to populate that. So that was my guess as to why they chose the SBA this time, as opposed to just dumping money into banks that might not give it out because they have all kinds of different restrictions.
Right. I would agree. I think that's an accurate theory and statement. And you know, they want to try to get this money out as soon as possible, as quickly as possible. And it's not perfect. It's never going to be perfect. I mean, there's still lawmakers in the federal government that, you know, you can get two different answers for the same question just because of how fast they moved. I know, shocker, right? But I mean, they're trying. I mean, they're like I said, there are a lot of confusing parts. And I think another thing, and I guess two other things on Donna, your question, the $10,000 advance, I think you can only obtain if you actually applied for the SBA loan, for the EIDL loan, in order to get that advance. And then at some point in time, they kind of changed things, as Charles said, where, you know, it's a live site, like they're just changing things, you know, automatically, quickly, without really a lot of fanfare, where instead of just a $10,000, you know, upfront lump sum advance, now they added in that condition of $1,000 per employee. And part of the reasoning, I think, why they did that was because they knew they were blowing through money. They were just, with all the applications, if they kept to the 10,000 lump sum, they would just
they would be out of money faster.
Right. So I think that's why
a major steakhouse chain that has stores all across the country got $20 million 4 days after it opened.
Now they're out of money. Is that correct that they're out of money now? Is that for the people who have already applied and been approved, or are those people taken care of? Because
I don't know that yet. I just know that they're out of money.
Yeah.
So I don't know about pending loans.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, my guess would be those that have been approved should get all, or at least a portion of what they've been approved for. But I mean, because of how fluid the situation is, you know, I don't think anyone's going to guarantee that.
Okay. And one more question. I heard two different things and I might have just been confused, but Patrick, you had said about the gig workers and the self-employed, it opens up in between 1 to 2 weeks for the unemployment benefits. But then I thought I heard David say that something was opening up for self-employment today.
The Pennsylvania website is opening up today from my sources, or what they're telling me. What Patrick was referring to was the Maryland unemployment site.
I did not. Okay. So.
Well, no, I was referring to Pennsylvania. What I've heard so thus far from my sources is that Pennsylvania site is not going to be active just yet, and that's, I mean, it could be active today. I was trying to do a little bit of searching while other people were talking. I did put in the chat a link for the FAQs that is straight from Pennsylvania's site, and everything that I'm reading on PA's website is that your self-employed people are not going to apply for traditional unemployment benefits, but you're going to apply for pandemic unemployment assistance, PUA. And so that link that I gave, put in the chat there, you can just copy and paste it. And it's not going to be perfect. I mean, it does say, you know, what do I need? What documentation do I need? And it did not go into as much depth as what David did to answer Charles' question as far as Schedule C. And whatnot. So I think it's a little fluid. So, I mean, you can keep checking back there, but I don't know. Yeah,
So
I haven't seen anything today.
And it could change from minute to minute.
Yeah,
it does. Something I found interesting, if somebody applied for the SBA loan they were pulling a hard credit report. If you're applying for the PPP, no credit report was pulled.
Right.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I understand they suspended the dings on your credit report by underwriters pulling your credit. Normally, that would drive your credit score down when you have multiple sources in a short period of time checking your credit to see if you're loan worthy. My understanding is that the federal regs or at least something within the CARE Act suspended those hits on your credit report.
Well, and something else that's, I think, a little interesting too is the fact that, well, I guess, again, two facts. One, I know with the CARES Act, we're supposed to get an extra $600 a week, regardless of whether you are self-employed or an employee, whether, regardless of which program you apply for benefits. You're not supposed to do a new application, but I haven't heard of anybody who's on unemployment start to see that money yet.
Not
So yes, it's approved. Yes, it's in the act, but the reality of it is it hasn't come in yet.
So Patrick, you're saying you haven't heard of anybody receiving the extra 600 or the unemployment itself?
The extra 600 on top of unemployment.
Okay,
I
I have heard of individuals that have had at least a payment. It hasn't been consistent. They've gotten like a one-time payment and they expected it the next week, but it did not come in the following week. So it's unclear. Yes, in Pennsylvania. So it's unclear as to whether or not, that's 600 additional dollars per week, or that's a per week thing or a one-time thing, at least to me at this point, because I have heard people say that they got some extra weekly benefit, but it wasn't consistent.
Yeah, it's supposed to be weekly.
My son gets unemployment from New York, and he gets it every week.
Okay.
And then I have also a friend in Florida. She gets it every week. So a lot of the other states are paying that $600 every week. It's actually $540 because they tax it to 10%.
Right.
I haven't heard of anybody in Pennsylvania.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't know. Again, I mean that's going back to the whole government efficiencies thing. It's approved. It's a law. Why some people are getting it and others aren't. I don't have an answer for that one. And then I think the other thing, beyond the unemployment with the stimulus checks, something I've heard. I know some people, I'm hearing more and more starting to get the checks, which is good. And it's just being directly deposited, and it's going to be, there's constant phases. You can now, the Wall Street Journal just announced in an article somewhere, and I think I can probably share it in the chat too. You can now track your stimulus check.
You can. There's a link on our website. You can
perfect.
Click on the link. It says, "Where's my stimulus check?"
Gotcha. Awesome. So go to Accounting Services of York.
We have a link of COVID-19 resources. All the links I'm talking about today are on our website, asyork.net.
Awesome. So you can at least track it. But then something I thought was interesting is apparently some people who may have, what's the term? Not bankruptcy, but they've got credit, debt collectors. If depending on how far behind you are with certain debt payments, I've heard that there might be a loophole that some debt collectors might be able just to go right back into your bank account and take your stimulus check and cover the debt.
Oh my God.
Wow. That's insane.
So hopefully that's not going to impact that many people, but that is something that's out there.
Something that I've come across on the stimulus, people who owed money for their 19 or 18 taxes, when their tax return is transmitted, the bank account is not transmitted with the return if they mail in a check. So they'll have to go onto the website and add their bank account for the stimulus check.
Right.
I sent out a text blast to my clients yesterday indicating this, and a lot of them haven't got their stimulus checks because they owed money and they mailed in a check.
So David, where is the link that you would go in and add your account? Is that on the IRS website, irs.gov?
Correct. If you go to asyork.net and click on COVID-19 resources, the link is there.
Is it under non-filers? I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah, it's under non-filers. Well,
Okay.
There's also a link below that to check the status of your stimulus.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, great.
But I've been getting a lot of calls saying I haven't got my stimulus, and I looked at their tax return and they said they owed money, and they mailed in a check, and so the bank account is not transmitted with the tax return if they owe money, unless they have the money they owe withdrawn from the bank account.
From that account. Mm-hmm.
And on that note, you've probably seen on the news a lot, people aren't getting their stimulus checks because it went to a different routing number or different bank account number. There was something posted on Facebook yesterday. There was a mob outside of a tax office who did not get their stimulus checks, and they thought the tax preparer had stolen the money. However, those people used bank products to pay for their, basically, if you use a bank product, you don't get a loan, but the tax preparer can take his fees out of their refund. And when that happens, the bank that takes the fees out reroutes the money. And so the IRS was sending their stimulus checks to the banks that tax preparers use for that purpose. And I talked to one of the banks yesterday, and they are sending the money back to the IRS. I've had 2 or 3 of my clients who didn't get their stimulus, and they used the bank product.
I had a theory on that. I thought maybe they just did one set of people that had already filed their 2019 taxes, because we did not file our 2019 taxes yet, and we did not get the stimulus. And then I thought maybe they would do the second batch for the 2018 filers. I don't know, it was just a theory, because some people were saying maybe they were doing by last name, and then that didn't work either, because there's a ton of people that got it, didn't matter what their last name was.
From what I've seen, a lot of the IRS is sending stimulus checks from the 2018 return.
Okay.
Still processing the 19 returns.
Okay.
I had clients that got stimulus checks who have not filed their 19 yet. So IRS based it on their 18 return. And other clients who filed in February and March, IRS still used their 2018 tax return. I've also seen reports of people who are getting double payments. IRS is counting their 18 and their 19 tax return. Or if a spouse passed away, they're still getting a stimulus check for their spouse. And they can keep that money, by the way, if they get a stimulus check for a decedent.
So David, one of the questions I was talking about with someone yesterday was, will they have to pay the stimulus check back? I mean, it's a tax credit, so they shouldn't have to pay it back. Will it affect their next year's tax?
It will be on the 2020 tax return. I'm anticipating that. Just like the last stimulus in 2010, that was on the tax return. If you did not get the stimulus or credit that you were entitled to, then you'll get it in your 2020 tax return. If you got overpaid, then it'll be deducted from your refund, in my opinion.
Okay. I read something totally different on the IRS, but all right. That's good to know.
Yeah. I mean, I think to kind of back up David a little bit, you know, this is the largest stimulus package, you know, we've ever had at $2.2 trillion. And while I think there's a lot of resources out there that say this is not taxable, this is not a advance of your tax credit and whatnot, I think it would be prudent to be cautious and to be prepared that, you know, there might be some kind of recourse, because I mean they're shelling out, you know, $2 trillion. So you know, while, and again, because of how fast it came out, one source will say one thing and another source may say something different. I will agree with you, Rita. I think most of the stuff I've read thus far has alluded to the fact that it's not taxable, but I'm not holding my breath either, just because things could change.
Right.
When they did the stimulus in 2010, it was on the following year tax return,
Right.
and it asked a specific question: did you get a stimulus check in 2010?
Right.
If you answered yes, and you didn't have to do anything. If you answered no, then it was added to your refund, and it asked for the amount of your stimulus. And if you were overpaid, then it would deduct that amount from your refund.
Wow. Okay.
Gotcha.
While we're on this topic, we had a question come in about how to apply for the PPP loan, and then if someone wants to touch on how the CARES Act will impact us.
My understanding is that the PPP loan, you have to go to your local bank. Banks won't process your loan unless you have a business account with them before February. At least some of the banks that I've had discussions with, and I think I've talked to 3 or 4 different banks. So it's being distributed by the SBA to the local banks. The local banks have an application process, and it's that bank that you have that relationship. They're the ones that had to deploy the application and use the process. And I was referring to that earlier. Some banks were very, very slow in deploying it and may have missed the first round of that money. So it was, I think, the Wild Wild West. I know that some came on the first day. I know some banks came online at 3 p.m. that day, and they crashed for about an hour and a half to 2 hours because the volume overwhelmed their servers. And then some of them held off to the following Monday and deployed some rickety systems that were not ready to handle the volume. And it's just been a process since then.
Okay.
Yeah,
As far as the CARES Act, or
yeah.
go ahead.
Can I share my screen? Would that be
Sure.
okay? So while I'm getting that up, I would just say, if you haven't checked out the prepareyork.com, I mean, that's run by the York County Economic Alliance. There's a ton of resources on there. They have a link under, I think it's nonprofits, small businesses. There's a link where you would click on payroll protection program. It takes you to the SBA site. It says right on there that they're not taking new applications, but I don't think they had a list of banks that you could work with, because I saw that was in the chat, but at least getting information on what would be needed and whatnot. I mean, all that would be there. But again, since they've ran out of money, they're not taking any new additional loans. I don't know. I think there's probably value in doing the application, at least getting it prepared, so that way whenever Congress does get around to adding more money into the coffers, as David said, you're ready to go. And I mean, I have a list of bankers that I've gotten from a couple different sources that can help with that. So if anybody needs something, I mean, I can send that out too. But can everybody see my screen here? Who's care about the CARES Act? Okay, so I'm not going to go through all the different details, but basically, it's a $2.2 trillion bill, $500 billion to large corporations. The 349's already been spent through the PPP and other items. $150 billion to states to help them with their unemployment. You got the $290 billion in stimulus checks. Again, you got some more money to extend unemployment, and then you got some other money going into hospitals and healthcare systems. I heard today that Abbott Laboratories, who does a lot with healthcare, they do like strep tests and stuff like that. I think they're going to be launching some kind of more efficient testing for COVID.
Yeah, it only takes
coming
5
out
minutes,
soon.
and it's not as invasive as that metal rod going down people's throats or something.
Right. So hopefully with that being launched out soon, that's going to, help out with some things. So obviously this impacts all kinds of people. Tax deadline pushed to July 15th. David, I thought this was interesting. I heard if you pay estimated taxes, you now have to pay the first quarter by July 15th, but the second quarter is due June 15th still. Is that right?
Wow.
Yeah, the second quarter is normally due June 15th.
Right.
But they've extended the first quarter payments to July 15th.
Gotcha. So work with your tax preparer on that. If you don't have one, use David. Individuals and families. So again, we kind of talked about this, $1,200 per person as the stimulus check, $500 per child. As far as how much do you get, I think there might be a better one on the next page, maybe. All right, I'll go back here. So there's a couple of different ranges, $75,000, $99,000. If you make less than $75,000 as an individual, then if you file as an individual, then you should be getting the full check. If you make somewhere in between 75 and 99, you're going to get a reduced amount. If you make more than 99, then you're not going to get a stimulus check. Married couples, it's 150 instead of the 75, all the way up to 198. If you collect Social Security or you don't file taxes, you don't have to do anything. You're still coming, right, David?
That depends. If you did not file a tax return and the only income is Social Security, you don't have to do anything. If you filed a tax return and you do collect Social Security and 1099-Rs or pensions, then you still have to double check and make sure that your bank account is on the IRS website.
Gotcha.
Hey, David, I do have a question for you. What about individuals that or they file taxes, but they pay in every year, like a small business owner? So the IRS doesn't have their account, their bank account.
They would have to go onto the IRS website and enter their bank info in.
As a non-filer, or I mean, because I just went on because I mean that's as a small business owner, it's kind of the situation I'm in, and I clicked on the check status and it said we're not able to determine your status at this time. So.
That's what mine said, actually.
Well, if you keep in mind, 250 million people are accessing that website right now, and it has crashed multiple times. They were not anticipating the load on that web server.
Well, but what you're saying is even though we're a filer, we should go in as a non-filer?
No. Click
Okay.
on the link that says, "Where's my stimulus?"
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that just keeps saying you can't determine it at this time.
David,
Yes.
is there a difference in amounts for gross versus adjusted gross income?
You want to look at line 8B and look at your AGI. That's your adjusted gross income. The
Right,
amounts
but
are
I
all-
mean in the rebates for the amounts, so here it's between 75 and 99 for an individual.
From my understanding, if you're under that threshold, it's going to be $1,200. Anything over, if you're over the income threshold, then you're not eligible, or they
Zero.
may phase out part of it.
Right, but I thought that there was a difference between your gross income combined and if you have an adjusted gross income. Isn't there a difference between the two?
Yes, there is.
Okay. So then,
And I believe this number is based on the adjusted gross.
okay, great.
Your adjusted gross takes your deductions into account.
Okay.
Mhm.
Your gross income doesn't.
Right, I was just wondering if that was for adjusted.
number?
gross or
Right.
gross, yeah.
What's your AGI?
Right, because certainly it'll affect some people. For some, the adjusted will make them eligible, whereas
Right.
otherwise they may not be.
Right. Yeah. So this is based on adjusted gross income, and there should be a line on your tax return that says just that, adjusted gross income.
Line 8B.
There you go. So unemployment,
Once
we kind of already talked about unemployment a little bit already. It is supposed to be retroactive, and you are supposed to reapply every 2 weeks. Keep filing every 2 weeks to keep that benefit going. Let's see. So these were just 2 examples, but I think we're good on the income, on the stimulus check. Student loans. So if you have federal, keyword there is federal student loans, not private student loans.
Not federal. Found that out.
If you have federal student loans, you should see it already changed where interest rate is now 0%. Monthly payments are suspended. I mean, if you want to pay, you can, but you don't have to. It's not going to negatively impact your credit until at least September 30th. And if you are somebody who is working in a field like for the Peace Corps or certain teachers where you have some kind of loan forgiveness, you have to usually pay for 5 or 10 years for that forgiveness to be activated. This suspension will not count against you. It will still, even though you're not technically making a payment, it'll still count as a payment for that purpose. Any questions on student loans? Federal student loans. Okay.
And I don't know if you had any information on this, but I did hear some rumblings about anticipating the possibility of including student loans in bankruptcy. Have you heard anything on that?
I have not heard anything about that yet.
That may be just the rumblings of the bankruptcy listserv. So.
Sure. David, were you going to say something?
I didn't hear your question, Chuck.
I was asking if you had heard anything about the possibility of including student loans on bankruptcy filings.
I haven't heard anything yet.
Okay.
And what I've been advising for some people that have these federal loans, they've asked me, should I pay it off? Should I just put the stimulus check or put the money straight on the debt? And I say it's 0%. It's not growing. I would bank it and I'd hang on to that money in case there's another emergency that comes up. And then you can reevaluate down the road and then say, okay, I kept my job this whole time. I kept having income. I'm okay financially. Now maybe I'll put a lump sum in against the loans.
Or they could talk to you and put it in the market, right?
I mean, that's possible too. It depends on their situation, how cash flow positive they are, how liquid they are. Definitely helps some people with that. So another interesting thing, I don't know how many people know about this, but typically if you're going to take money out of your retirement account before the age of 59 and a half or 55, depending on the type, there's a 10% penalty. But this year, if you need to take money out, that penalty is being waived. I will say that, you know, the burden of proof is always on the taxpayer. So you got to work closely with people like David to make sure you have the proper documentation. Because I can tell you the investment companies are just going to say, here's a 1099, you took the money out. Whether it's taxable or not, you know, that's not up to us. So there is a suspension on the 10% penalty if you need to take money out of your retirement accounts. And then any potential tax you would have to pay might be avoided if you spread the repayment back over 3 years. If you put the money back over a period of 3 years, you're potentially not having to pay any taxes on that money you took out. So again, burden of proof is on the accountant, is on you as the taxpayer. You can still take loans from your 401k. It used to be no more than 50% or 50,000 of your 401k balance. So, you know, as an example, if you have $50,000 in your 401, you can't take all 50 of it and borrow it. You can only borrow 25,000. But if you have 150 or 200,000 in your account, you can't borrow more than 50. Now it is increased to $100,000 or 100% of the account balance if you have less than 100,000 in the 401k that you can borrow against it. These are not things I would recommend doing as a first choice, but I mean, if you're in a dire need, it's good to know these things.
Well, I tell you, that's very valuable, Patrick, from a family law perspective, because a lot of times part of an equitable distribution discussion is the doing a quadra to transfer retirement funds from one spouse to the other, the consequences of drawing that. So it may that very valuable information for me.
Good.
Thank you.
The other thing too is that, you know, once you hit 72 now, you're required to take money out of retirement accounts, certain retirement accounts. For 2020, that's no longer a requirement. You do not have to take that RMD out if you do not have to or want to. So you can get around that. And there's some other things with inherited accounts. You know, again, if you've inherited money from somebody, you're required to take money out. You don't have to take it if you don't want to.
A lot of good information. We're coming close to the time limit on Zoom. We scheduled it for an hour-long meeting, so I wanted to go around and get final thoughts from everyone. Here's what I can help with. You know, if you're facing this, we had covered a lot of good information regarding the loans and financials information. We're going to repost this webinar if we can help anyone address some of those similar questions. But let's just go around the room quick. I appreciate everyone being here today. We'd love to do another one next week or the following, all different types of topics, but whoever would like to start.
Sure.
I posted a link to COVID-19 resources in the chat from
Appreciate
our
it.
website. There's lots of good links there. PPP, SBA, where's my stimulus? If anyone has any questions, feel free to call or text our office.
Yep. And I'll be sending out the contact information for all the presenters here to everybody who's attended the Zoom. So if you want to reach out to any one of us directly, one of the things that we're doing is we're doing free consultations with people, understanding their networks, understanding their needs. And if it might not be something we can do, we can definitely refer it to one of our business partners here within the room. So keep us in mind. And I'll just go around to everybody else as well. You guys offering any specials or anything for the next couple months to clients or consultations?
I'll just say I'm giving free consultations. Anybody has questions, you know, we'll talk to them.
Yeah, I'll be doing free consultations as well. Just one, in terms of the final parting thought for me is I did post a link to the Disease and Control Act that I discussed earlier that the governor is operating under. If you want some light reading, read a statute. A lot of people, if you have questions about custody and how the court system is handling that, any concerns about bankruptcy or if you get tangled up in the court system, feel free to give us a call. Free consultations, and we'll do Zoom or via telephone as well.
Excellent. How about Donna?
And my agency is also doing free consultations for anyone who needs it. Some of the major questions you'll hear as you're talking to business owners and individuals, is, do I have coverage for this? And typically the answer is for under a business income form, the answer is no. But virus, bacteria, and pandemics are strictly excluded. It's one of the big five. It's flood, earthquake, lead, asbestos, and virus, bacteria. So that's causing a lot of angst and a lot of frustration. But what we can do is look at what they are insuring and maybe what they shouldn't be insuring. So I can make suggestions. I'm not looking to take other people's business necessarily, but if they don't have an agent to call, then certainly we're here. Sometimes it's a matter of parking a couple of vehicles and getting them off the insurance, making sure that they're not moving. So, I know, for instance, Travelers is giving personal lines auto clients a 15% credit because there is a reduction in driving. The stay-at-home order causes them to stay home. So there are some opportunities within the marketplace, but certainly, when you hear these frustrations, just refer them to the website, VanDyneinsurance.com, and they can contact me on that phone number there, email there. So, I'm happy to talk to people because sometimes talking to someone who can give you some guidance on it, give you the right terminology to call your agent is helpful. So I'm certainly open to that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
The last thing I'd say, I've talked enough, but the last thing I'll say, I just shared my screen again. From a market standpoint, didn't talk about that at all. I'd say, market is going up right now just from, positive speculation on vaccines and whatnot, but we still have a long ways to go. We still, haven't, gotten past the virus yet. We're still closed and shut down for right now, and we're going to see a lot of bad economic data come out. So hang in there. I think we'll see some more volatility. Market may go back down again in the future, but stay fully invested if you can. Talk to your advisor about your situation if there is some major concerns, but hang in there.
Thank
If you haven't filed your 19 taxes, we're still taking drop-offs.
Excellent. Okay.
All right.
Kyle?
Now, you might want to mention that we're doing the will packages for a decent cost.
Okay. So the Hobbs Law Firm is doing will package. If anybody's concerned about getting their affairs in order, just reach out to us, and we are doing a deal. It's 3 documents. You got your living will, your power of attorney, and your will.
Your last will.
Okay. Thanks, Rita, for reminding me.
You're welcome. This is great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, enjoy your Friday, everyone. Thanks so much for being part of this, and hopefully we'll see you next time.
Appreciate all the information.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Kyle.
Thanks
for
guys
having
for
me.
attending. We'll see you next time.
Thanks all.
All right.
Bye.
See you guys.